Welcome back, guys. So moving on from the last video, I think you were expecting the next video we're going to have all this stripped off. Well, say all this, I mean the masking stripped off, and we'll be ready to put on the final fit. However, I decided I was wanting to have a little bit more of a distressed look on the aircraft, a little bit more worn look, and just to sort of add more interest to what is already an interesting model. So I've been busy, and I've been busy with oil paints. So you can see on this card here we have got a number of oil paints. So we've got titanium white, Abtai lungs, dust, we've got smoke, we've got burnt umber, dark green and yellow, and they're the kind of colors you need for weathering greys, greens, a little bit of white. So if I zoom in, there we go. Hopefully you can see that we've got a greater tonal variation, but we've also got, you know, weathering around the engines. We've got a little bit of oil streaking. We've got more defined panel lines, and a lot of these cues I've taken off of black and white photographs of Catalinas, where they had that sun bleached weathered look. If we look over here, get that to focus, hopefully. So you should be able to see, kind of picking out those sort of individual centers of the panels. I've noticed on photographs that there was panels on the upper wing that were delineated with sort of a greasy, dirty film. Radial engines are notoriously leaky, so we've got some leaks come out of this engine here. We've got some fading on the engine nacelles. So I've done the whole aircraft. But I've left this wing here because I thought I would like to show you just how I've gone about doing it. Now, fighting with the size of this aircraft, as always. Let's get that in shot. We'll zoom back in a little bit so we can get a good look at it. So you should be able to sort of see the rough dividing line here, where we've got this weathered look. The green is kind of muted, so with the yellow it brings that highlight back in and it lifts the color up. So what brushes am I using? So I have got a simple Trumpeter Master Tools modeling brush. It's an F01, and the other brush I've been using is actually Abtalung 502 brush 830. So they're just two small brushes. Got some AK odorless thinners, and we've got some Sansador Winsor & Newton. So now these oil paints have been on this piece of card for probably the cut of 3 or 4 days now, so they are starting to dry out. We should just have enough in them to do what we need to do. So just wetting the brush in a little bit of, this is the Abtalung brush, and a little bit of Sansador, and then we're just working that into the yellow oil paint. And this is the beauty of oil paints, is they do take ages to dry. Now what we want to do is highlight the high spots of the ribs, and we just want to use very little. We don't need a lot because it's very strong. So we just gently paint down the ribs. Yes, you can see that, that's good. Just the high spot of the ribs. And then we want to put little dots, just little dots. See that little tap-in motion there? Right in the center of the panels. You don't want to put this in the rivet lines. You definitely don't want to put this in the panel lines because it will just lighten it all up. Okay. And you can do slightly heavy, slightly lighter. You can vary it. But less is more with oils. Less is definitely more. Now we need to be careful around the decal because yellow and blue ain't going to match at all. So we just want to work away from the decal. Little tapping motions, rotate the brush. It doesn't matter if one panel gets slightly less as the other. All adds to that variance, and that's what we want to do. We're doing this to break up the surface of the aircraft so it doesn't look like a big brick. It looks more like a scaled down replica of the real aircraft. So just taking a little bit more oil paint on the brush, just so we've got something. And again, going down that high spots, trying to keep it neat. The neater you keep it, the better the effect. And all we want to do is highlight that rib. Right, so there we go. Now, how do we blend? Well, there's a number of different brushes I use. So my trusty Dale & Rowley number 6 flat shader, and I have a number 8 flat shader. I also have, courtesy of my good lady wife, her blending brush from the makeup stash, which works really, really well. And I've got another one of her makeup brushes as well. Where it's gone, I don't know. Should be around here somewhere. And I also have another Master Tools brush, and it's the flat brush. It's an F08. And I use that if we need to move it a bit more. Slightly moisten this with Sansador or odorless thinners, and it'll help activate that paint a little bit more, and make it easier to move or even totally strip off the model. Right, so blending, how do we do it? A couple of different ways of doing it. You can either just go in there, brush strokes, blend it, no bother, or you can stipple it. You'll need to hold the model if you're stippling, or you can do the little round circular motions. Now what I always say is just figure out what works for you and do that. You know, I'm just showing you how I do it. I am no expert by any means or imagination. I'm just a middle-aged guy building plastic model airplanes and having fun whilst I'm doing it. You do need to hold the aircraft reasonably still so you can get the right amount of pressure. There we go. So we work in the paint. And oil paint will move for a long, long time. It looks like you've got nothing there, but actually there's quite a bit there. The main thing is to try and keep your brush strokes within the green or whatever color you're doing, and that way you don't tint the shade of camouflage that's next to it. So there's the first blend. Okay, so that's blended it in. Now we can use a denser brush and that'll blend it in further. But it'll also, because it's a denser brush and because it's a makeup brush too, it'll start feathering it. I would say, I call it feathering, but it basically just smooths the blend out. That's how I would describe it. Takes the harshness off it. So there we go. Now we can see that area that we've got the highlight paint on and it's starting to look good. However, this is always the however, there is a couple of bits I'm not quite happy with here and sort of here. And this is where you get your moist shading brush, and it just needs to be moist, so you just dip it into the thinners and then take a paper towel and wick off the bulk of the thinners. So you want it to be nearly dry brushing type territory, but because it's odorless thinners, it'll stay on the brush and you still get quite a bit there. And all we do is just clean away from the low spots and then just gently flick it down on the high spot, and that'll help blend it a little bit. Now you probably need to do it a little bit more when the paints are dry like these are, just because they're drying up really quickly on the surface. Now if there's any areas we're not so happy about on the actual main section of the panel, what we can do is we can come in, say here at the front, we want to blend that a bit more, we can stipple, and because it's got this very, very thin film of thinners on the brush, it'll activate the paint just enough to help that blend. There we go. Keeping it within the camouflage color panels. There we go. Now, whilst that is still drying, this is where I needed my other brush and I have no idea where it's gone. Whilst that's starting to air off, I could come in with my other shader, and I wish I knew what I've done with it. Doesn't matter, we'll figure it out. What you want is a really soft brush, so something like this, really soft. This is just a Dale & Rowley No. 6 round. Okay, dry, completely dry, and you can just come in here and you can either pull it down just with a tip, just to help the blend, or you can stipple, or a combination of both. And what we should have is a nicely blended color on the original model. Now, if the highlights, because it's obviously lifted the paint color up, if it's kind of detracting from a panel line that you want to stay darker, you can always come in with a Q-tip, cotton bud, and just gently run it along that panel line. There we go. And they're quite precise, and they will lift just a small amount of paint, but it'll help to lower down the color shift on the panel to enhance that sort of darker shade there that you want. And if it's too stark a line, then we can just go back in here with a blender, a little bit of a blender, very, very lightly. You don't want to move too much of the paint now. A little bit of blender, blend it back in. The blender will help smooth out the film of thinners, and I think hopefully you can see that we've kind of enhanced the panel lines again, put a bit of deepness back in them. So there we go. Same for the white. Now the white we use on the grey. Again, this paint has been lying a little while, so I'm just rehydrating the brush. Can you see that? Rehydrating the brush. Titanium white actually is staying a little bit more moist than the yellow. Now, sparingly, same again, down the ribs. And the beauty with this is if you wanted to really highlight, you could put heavy at one point and then fade it away. What a kind of constant highlight. You just want to get it to the point that it looks like that because they've been the linen's been stretched over these wooden trailing edge ribs, that it's bleached with the sun just that little bit more. There we go. And same idea, just tapping in. There we go. Now, be cautious that the brush you use for blending the white isn't the brush you used for blending the yellow, because yellow pigment is really, really strong and it will just stain the white yellow. So just testing, because I've got two brushes the same. Make sure I haven't done it. Now we're okay. So same again, do the first blend, and you see this white paint is quite strong. So get in there and work that in. So we're going to actually need to go back to our brush now. I haven't put any more thinners on this brush. You can see how much is staying on this brush. And it's really, really well at shifting the white. So we're just dragging it back along the wing so that highlight stays on those raised areas. There we go. And then we can come back in with a clean blending brush. There's another soft brush here. Okay, and then we'll just stipple. And then stroke it down the panel. There we go. And that's it. So, what I'm going to do is just finish off this last bit of section here, and then we can come back and take a look at the end result. We're back. Literally took me 5 minutes. I found my other blending brush. I don't even know what make it is, but that's the sort of end you need. Nice, light, fluffy end just to go in there and blend. But that is everything blended in and getting ready to go. So hopefully you can see there that we've got tonal variation, increase the highlights, low lights, we've got nice patchy finish. It just generally looks well used, which is what we want. Now, what about pan lines? What if we've lost them a little bit? Can we do anything about it? Yes, we can. And oils are brilliant. So this is the brush I had the white on. I'll just get it cleaned. And I've actually been using Sansador for doing most of this stuff. It's a really, really good odorless thinners, or low odor thinner as they call it. So clean the brush, get all the white off it. Then take the brush, and you want the brush to be full, and we're going to work this on the card. You can't see that good. My camera's on a real high overhead, so I need to keep looking up to see if you are in frame. I take a bit of brown. Brown's pretty much dried out. So there you can see we've got a nice smooth thin paint. Now say for example we want to highlight, you know, this bit of panel here. It's almost like a pin wash. Just touch along the panel line. Less is more. There we go. So that's really stark. I mean, that's quite a dark color. Now we want a slightly more precise brush. So what I like blending with as well is this Daler and Rowley #1 liner brush. It's quite long bristles, and it can hold quite a bit of thinners. But same again, we've just dipped it in the thinners, we've wicked off pretty much all of it. I'm just going to come back in here, and there's nice soft bristles. You've got a lot of flex because it's this long bristled liner brush. We're just going to come in here and blend. So little stabbing motions. It's just to soften this paint. Looks horrendous, don't worry. Go back in, rinse the first lot of oil off, and then start blending again. It will start to lower the contrast, because you're basically just thinning the paint down. Yeah, being a dark paint, it might take a little while to do. When you think you're there, come back with your soft brush and then stipple. This will help dry it quicker, and it'll also help blend it a little bit. And we can see how we've done. Once you've got the bulk of it off, you'll be able to see roughly what it's going to look like. And if you think you've gone too far, don't panic. We've got our brush that had the yellow on. We can just come back in with it and just gently tighten up the shading we've put on the panel line. And again, because it's reasonably fresh and hydrated with the thinners, it's going to be very easy to blend. But that's just tighten that up straight away. This is the beauty of oil paints. If you really didn't like it, we could come in here with a brush that is fully loaded with thinners and basically wash this all away. Because we're painting oils over acrylic, we take the oil off and we won't harm the acrylic layers that are below. I need to look at this corner here. Get that color contrast back in there. And there we go. We used the white brush for the grey, but it's actually over the grey because the grey is a darker colour. It's easier to blend it in. So you can just see with the white that's already on that panel, we're just blending that into that panel a bit more. And if you didn't want to have the stark finish, you could use a brown, or you could mix any of the darker paints with sort of this light sandy color to not highlight it, not be so stark. If we look here at this panel here, this is the sort of more browny color I've put in, and then here's more browny oily stains, and other areas it's more dark. But there we go. That's kind of how I do my oil weathering. It's nothing too difficult. You have to be a little bit brave to try new things, but once you get a hang of it and once you get a style that you're happy with, that's all that matters. The one key thing to remember with oil paint rendering is it needs to go down on at least a satin finish, or ideally a sort of matte finish, just so the oil paint's got something to grip into. If you try and put it down on a gloss finish, it's just going to slide off, and you won't end up, whether you'd struggle to highlight the model. It can be done, but it's better with a satin or a matte finish. So there we go. That is oil paint finished. Excellent. Next job. Well, next job is we need to start thinking about detail painting the exhausts. Obviously the masking's going to come off, and then we've got the wingtip floats to attach. Props are done, and then the last job will be putting all the rigging on. So we are actually really close to the finish line with this now. So I'm going to have a tidy up here, get all this oil paints and stuff away, and then we can come back and start getting these final jobs done. See you soon. Right, so we've had a bit of a cleanup. So ancillaries. Well, we've got wing floats to put on, or wingtip floats to put on. There's 4 depth charges here to put on. As a part of the wingtip system, we've got the braces to put on. Props can go last, and then there are 2, if we can find them, waist guns to put on too. I'll leave them in there for now with the props. Right. Also, minor repair to do. If I can find it. As always, it goes missing. There we go. Keep knocking off this here. It's the bracket for the wing radar antenna. So there's a little bit of repair work to do here with just the wear and tear on the paint, so that's something to do as well, but we are getting there. Now, one disappointing thing of this kit is the mountings for the underwing stores, the ordnance, the depth charges. They are completely absent from the kit. The depth charges just glue straight into the wings without any of the normal sort of bomb carrying racks you'd expect to see on an aircraft. If I had more time, I'd probably try and make some scratch build ones up, but I don't, so I won't. Right, so that's that bit back on. How are we going to attach these? Well, they've got quite good attachment points. If I can get them off the toothpick. So if we look at that, you should be able to see the attachment points. There's 2 lugs there, and they just go straight into the wings. So I think the easiest way to glue these on will be with a little bit of super glue. We could also use, might actually also use Revell contactor. We'll try this, I think. Right. As always, these things tend to dry up in the tube. We'll just get a lighter. There we go. Burn out the glue that's stuck in the tube, and we have two dots. And then we'll go straight in with the depth charge. And this will actually dry up reasonably quickly. And the aircraft is actually going to be upside down for just a little while whilst the wingtip floats dry. Now just be careful, because this has a habit of dripping, so I tend to keep a bit of kitchen towel handy to wipe the needle off, so we're not going to spill or drop glue over our nicely painted surface. We want it just to go in those location points there. That's quite a positive fit, so I should hold it quite nicely. Same on this side. And with this needle assembly on the glue, you can get some nice precise application. Even when you do it left-handed and you're a right-handed person. Right, let's get these two on. There we go. Good positive fit. Just make sure they are right. So there's the depth charges in, so let's get rid of these toothpicks. So there's a bit of colour on the underside of the wing, which is good. Now, wingtip floats. If you remember, then obviously all this side and these sides are photo etch, so you can't glue that with ordinary glue. However, this piece here is plastic, as is that piece there. So I am actually going to use I've got a bit of yellow paint on there. I am actually going to use Revell contactor because I want a really good strong joint. Now these fit very, very tight indeed, but with a bit of gentle persuasion, and be very careful because we don't want to start breaking this kit now we've gotten this far down with it. They go in first, and then these are sided, and it'll be pretty apparent which side is which. this is this side's, and this is this side's. They'll only go one way. So just pop them. And this is the tricky bit when you're filming. You've got a camera overhead. It's sometimes a bit difficult to actually do these jobs and keep it in frame. The location's pretty positive. Alright, give me a moment while I check the alignment. So there we go. Both wingtip floats are on and nicely dried. We've got the depth charges curing up. The floats went on reasonably well. A little bit tricky because we had the photo etch on, so the tolerances are really, really tight. And these plastic parts here, the retracting parts, are quite fragile. I did manage to break this side. But I've managed to get it glued up. I've glued them on with a combination of Revell contactor, just with a bit of Tamiya extra thin wicked into it to help it seal the joint. And there is a little bit of damage to the white paint as a result of the Tamiya extra thin. So we've got a little bit of repair work to do with the airbrush just to blow in some white to blend in where the glue has basically dissolved it into the plastic. But anyway, it's looking good. Both floats are, if I can get it in picture, both floats, there we go, are 90 degrees to the wing. If I can turn this without knocking anything, this is a huge model. Look at it that way on, there we go. You see the floats, it's really starting to come together. It's really quite a nice angle for the aircraft. We've got all that lovely weathering work on the upper surfaces and on the lower surfaces. So it's starting to look like an impressive model. So, next jobs. We've got aerials to go on, or antennas to go on the upper surfaces. We've got the radar antennas to go on the lower wings, which is going to be the last thing to attach to this because they're really quite fragile. And we've got the fuel, I'm assuming they're fuel dump tubes. I don't know what you'd call them in proper terminology, but anyway, that's what I think they are. So they're to go on the lower wing, and then obviously a little bit of touch-up work here and there. So we are actually really pushing on quite well to getting this thing finished. So we'll leave it here for now. Any questions or comments, pop them down below. I will always take time to read and answer them. And as always, stay safe and happy modeling.